Hello adventurers, this is Craddock and we're back with a build guide for the Blood Mage build. This is the Trag'oul's build that I've been working on developing. Really excited to play this build. It just gives you such a good feeling of control on the battlefield with your command skeletons. You've got, you're cursing enemies, you're consuming their corpses, you're stunning them. You have to, it's not so much, hold down a button or watch your stack count so much as, pay attention to your positioning, stun the right enemies, do I need to move forward? Do I need to get into an Oculus ring? Those sort of questions that you're deciding on rather than, hey, I just need to pounce on this lead or whatever. Some of the other builds in this game kind of feel like. But anyway, this is, we're using the Trag'oul set. 2 set we're not using because we're not using Blood Rush. 4 set doubles your life when you overheal. Can be hard to get this started, or if you die, it can be hard to, get going again, gain momentum, but it is a nice bonus and it keeps you alive. 6 set, 3300% increased damage. Skills cost twice as much life. This is one of the big multipliers in this build. I'm going to go ahead and quickly point out the other multipliers. We got the Endless Walk, so when you're standing still, you will get that extra damage bonus. So try and limit your movement, and you're going to have to fish for mob types and maps that would allow you to not have to move very much and get lucky with elites, that sort of thing, when you're really pushing high, that is. We're also using Jessuth's set, the 400% extra damage when you command skeleton on enemies, so you have to remember to keep your command skeletons active so that that doesn't expire. And it will automatically refresh as it jumps to nearby targets, but when you're going in between packs it will not, so you just gotta keep an eye on it. Let's see, what other multiplier? Scythe of the Cycle, secondary skills, which Blood Mage is a secondary skill. Deal 300% increased damage while bone armor is active. So this is the other thing. We got to keep up our bone armor to keep up this multiplier and to keep ourselves alive, because this does give us damage reduction and all that goodness. We are also using the Krysbin's ring. Deal 100% increased damage against slowed enemies and triple of that against like stuns or freezes or any other type of charm or fear. So we got a lot of stuns in this build. Dizzying Curse. Cursed enemies have 10% chance to be stunned when your pets hit them. It's very nice. Stun there. Here's the big one. It's kind of the AoE stun that you put out around your character. It's fairly close range, but it does help you do a lot of damage via the Krysbin's ring. And we've got Freezing Grasp on our command skeletons, so whenever you command them, they will freeze the target that they're attacking. This is most useful for like pinpointing those dangerous mobs. So any like skeleton archer or a ghost or a leaper or a winged assassin, you want to lock them down before they even have a chance to, do whatever it is that they do best. But anyway, so there's a lot of stuns in this build. We do have Zays, but the thing to note with the stun on Zays is the pets do not proc it, only your character procs the stun. So it's just something to keep in mind. And let's see. So we are using Tasker and Theo in this build. It will increase the attack speed of our pets a lot, which is really nice. It allows us to get to the 24 frames per attack breakpoint, which is huge. Means your skeleton mages are just going to be attacking that much faster, doing that much more damage. And the other cool thing is that the particular breakpoint we're in means you only have to assign a few attack speed rolls, not as much as you would think, to hit that. So it's very efficient and it's very good. Now let's see. So in this build, we're basically casting our mages. It'll expend life, which will regenerate with a couple of different mechanisms. We have recovery via Siphon Blood. We also have recovery via Grisly Tribute. Grisly Tribute, you're healed for 10% of your life on hit when one of your minions hits an enemy. And we've slotted life on hit on our weapon, on our bracer, so we have near 40,000 life per hit in this build, or should, and that will give us enough recovery while our pets are hitting monsters to continually spam our skeletal mages and keep all 10 of them out, since there is a maximum of 10, and we want to keep them out as long as possible, and to that end we've got several different passives and abilities and unique items slotted. So life support in and of itself will increase them by 2 seconds to duration, and we also have the Circle of Nailju's Evol, and that is additional 4 seconds, and it doubles the number of mages we get with each cast, which is pretty much required for this build. And then we've got Extended Servitude. I tested dropping this. You don't really want to do it. The timing on the mages is such that you have to have it. But anyway, it's a very good passive in and of itself. Let you keep your mages out longer and do other things, you know, dodge attacks, cast your bone armor, curse enemies. I forgot to mention Decrepify is also, the curse itself is reducing damage of the enemies. Plus, we're wearing the Dainty's Binding Belt, which gives you additional damage reduction. This is an amazing source of DR that's going to keep you from getting one-shot. Brace yourself. This build is actually really glassy, even with all the stuff I've tried to put in to make it a little bit more manageable, but you will get one-shot a lot, and especially if you don't have your 4-piece up, you will get one-shot. So it's a little difficult to play, it's a little more fishy, but it's a lot of fun. We also have Ancient Parthian Defenders in this build, so that when we do have to run forward and proc our bone armor, or if we have to, or if we see like an Oculus spawn from our follower ring, we can run into that, even if it's up closer to enemies, and still be able to survive because we're constantly stunning all the monsters that are nearby, which is really nice. Now, I did include a little bit of cooldown because, you know, you'd be thinking, hey, you know, what if you reduce the cooldown on your bone armor? You stun enemies more often, you get more damage through Krysbins. It's a huge DPS increase as well. Well, yes, that's true, but there's only so much space for cooldown in the build, and I'll go over a little over that, but the main method I did is just through Paragon, and then I put a diamond in the helm. So that gives you about 20%, which turns out is just enough to get you, I think the DR, the enemy resistance to stuns kind of lets up at that point, so you can stun them again. It's very nice. Anyway, I feel this is a good amount of cooldown. And let's see. Another huge part of this build, since we're spending so much life on the skeletal mages, another way we can recover and sort of help us move between packs and keep our life up while we're in battle. So we're using Devour to devour any corpses of the enemies that die, which will, the Cannibalize rune gives us extra life. In addition to that, we're using Life from Death, so we're generating more corpses when we devour, or more health globes when we devour our corpses. And we're also using Blood for Blood, so when we pick up a health globe, we get a free health cost on our blood spells. So this is really useful for moving in between those packs and just continuing through the rift without having any issues. Since you don't have a movement ability, we don't have Blood Rush, you really want to make it efficient where you're positioning yourself and where you're moving. Kind of position yourself a little bit back, but not too far back, because you still want to advance through the rift, and you want to kind of gauge where the monsters are, and if they're gaining on you or going to flank you, you might want to move back a bit. But if there's an Oculus spawn, maybe you want to move forward, get a little bit more aggressive, so you just have to keep an eye. I typically stand about 30 to 40 yards away. Sometimes I go in the 20-yard range so I can get APDs and proc, you know, extra damage and that sort of thing. But just something to keep in mind. Oh, and one more thing before I forget, the Siphon Blood rune we're using, Bloodsucker, helps us pull in all those health globes. So it really helps us not have to move to pick up the globes. So otherwise we would be reducing our damage bonus from Endless Walk, which you don't want to do. But anyway, that's what that's for. Now some quick miscellaneous gameplay tips. Remember to use your siphon blood whenever you're not using anything else, whenever you're cursing or stunning or commanding your skeletons. Just make sure you're siphoning just to regenerate your health, and more importantly, regenerate your essence, because this is one of the only means of regenerating essence. If you're not killing enemies, you're gonna run out. And those skeleton mages, they don't stop, the duration doesn't stop depleting, so you gotta continually generate that essence. Another thing, I typically use the Enchantress for a follower, because she will use all of her stun abilities, her charm abilities. They help proc the Krysbin's ring, and you can do more damage that way, which is really nice. As far as pylons go, shielding, speed, conduit, power, those are the best ones. With a shield, sometimes I will run ahead and get to a large group of density, so I could clear that instead of the ribble rabble that I'd been clearing before. I might use it that way. Yeah, with conduit you got to be careful, because you're going to get closer to the mob, so you're in more danger because you're not behind your pets like you usually are. The pets will soak up a lot of damage, and all the little projectiles, you can actually spawn them in front of you and block attacks, which is part of how you survive with this build. And you'll kind of get used to where the mages spawn when you're pointing a certain direction with your cursor. It's also important. Kind of build a wall, so to speak. Sometimes your mages, the AI doesn't like to attack necessarily. They'll just kind of stand there. And I found it's because I'm too far away and they can't see the mob that I'm like blood siphoning or whatever. So sometimes you just have to move forward a little bit, they'll re-engage, and then you can, either go back or kind of stay where you are, depending on what's going on. Or you can just respawn them, because sometimes they'll stay that way and they're kind of bugged out, and you just need to respawn them and spend all your life. Woohoo! But anyway, that's going on. Oh, and another thing, just remember the breakpoint is 1.6 character sheet attacks per second. Just make sure you're above that. There is a little wiggle room in that affix I was talking about, so one of your attack speed rolls can be a little off and you'll still hit the breakpoint, which is very nice. Now that's the basic overview of how the build works, how everything interacts, and how you're going to want to kind of play through the rift. Now I'm going to go over the affixes and all the gritty little details of every little piece of item that you're going to want to get perfect. And I'll also be going over some alternate variations of the build that you could do if you wanted, so this will be good. So let's start off with the main build. This is the one that does the most damage and I found is the most efficient. Basically, we place 3 damage gems, which is very, you would think is very unorthodox maybe, but it works. With the Grizzly Tribute to keep your health up, you can manage 3 offensive multipliers. We have Bane of the Trapped, we have Enforcer, and we have Zay's Stone of Vengeance. So Trapped is also getting procced by our Decrepify at range, but when we're close up, it'll self-proc, which is nice. And then Zay's, like I said, you're going to be, maybe 30, 40 yards away, unless you need to move up for an Oculus Ring or something. So your damage bonus from this legendary gem will vary throughout the rift, but, overall, I think it's the best choice, and at the Rift Guardian, you can use it to almost its full potential, just hammering down that boss. Alright, let's get into the affixes. So we got, like I said, attack speed. We're going to slot it. The most efficient place is on the weapon, and then one other slot. That other slot being either gloves or one of your rings. So here, the most efficient setup is actually on the gloves and the weapon, if you want to get like really down to it. But if you need to, you can roll it on one of your rings instead, and then that would free up the gloves to do something like this, where you could put vitality on your gloves instead and keep attack speed on one of your rings, and that's also a very good setup because it gives you a little bit more toughness. For full damage setup, again, gloves, weapon. Now we've got a lot of crit and crit hit damage rolls. You know, you're going to want crit on your shield, crit hit damage on your rings, crit on your rings. You're going to want a crit on your bracer, on your amulet, you know, your helmet. So, you know, make sure you've got all those crit and crit hit damage rolls on your gear. You're going to also want physical, very important, on your bracer, max 20%, on your amulet, max 20%. It's a huge damage bonus since the Skeletal Mages are the physical rune, do more damage. You also want Skeletal Mage damage, very important, on the helmet and the boots. So that's an extra 30% right there. Huge skill boost, skill damage boost there. So let's continue on. I opted, I was testing area damage out quite a bit. I went up to 90% area damage, and it seemed fairly good on the open type maps, but the problem is those maps aren't always the maps that you're going to clear on. I tend to get my best clears on the linear type maps instead. That's why I ended up dropping the alternate passive, which was spreading malediction, because you know you're cursing a certain number of enemies, and when on a linear map you're typically not cursing more than maybe 15 mobs at a time, so the bonus isn't as large as Zay. This is one of the alternate setups, by the way. You could, instead of Zays, you could run Molten Wildebeest Gizzard for that recovery, and you could use this passive instead. This is a more stable setup, I would say. So if you're just getting the feel for the build, you might want to try this first before Grizzly Tribute. But this is the better setup, in my opinion. So continuing on with affixes, I got area damage on my shoulders. I ended up only with 70%. You can opt for 90. 90 is fine, but I just felt it wasn't doing as much as I thought it could. It's still a good stat to have in this build, just not quite the best in my opinion. So I went with average damage on rings. So as your Paragon increases, you will only, you know, you will benefit more from the average damage, in other words. So that's why I've slotted this here. As mentioned, you can opt for up to 90% area damage by putting 20% on your ring here. That's another option. Let's see. For your weapon, with the attack speed roll, you're going to want to roll off your intellect. Make sure you don't have intellect and keep your plus damage roll. That's very important. So plus damage, attack speed, life per hit. The cool thing was I was able to clear even without the life per hit. So if you happen to get a weapon that's, you know, int attack speed and percent damage, that's still a good weapon and you can make it by with that. It's just I feel for survivability, recovery, that sort of thing, this will be the better setup. Let's see, continuing on, defensive affixes, life percent, anywhere you can put it, which is so shoulders, the belt, and the shield. Very important rolls to keep your health up and keep you from getting one shot. Also, we've got elite damage reduction both on the shield and the chest. Elites are probably one of the hardest hitting enemies in the game here, so this will help you survive, especially considering we don't have a legendary gem that's keeping our damage reduction up. Let's see. So as far as secondaries, you want secondary resist. Physical is very nice to have. An interesting affix to include might be health globes and potion grant life, because we're picking up so many globes. It might restore more life. I guess max essence on your weapon just cause. Though notably, you know, in Paragon you don't necessarily need max essence. So when I was pushing, I wasn't using max essence. But if I was just doing like a little bit lower speeds to level up gems or whatever, yeah, put in max essence because it makes your life easier. So let's see, you're a little bit low on vitality, so what I did, because we made the roll for life per hit on the bracer, so what I did is I put in Vite Gems in the pants. I recommend you do that too, just to keep your health up to a reasonable level. And we've got armor rolls on the belt, pants, and boots. And that's it. So I'll now go over some alternate setups. So as mentioned, we've got the gizzard with the malediction passive, spreading malediction. You can opt something on the shoulder piece is if you really, just don't like the area damage, you want to go with more cooldown instead. This is the place you would put it. Put it on your shoulder and on your helmet, and that'll boost you up to 27.55, which is just a little bit more, but that's an acceptable roll as well if you happen to get a shoulder like that, because these particular shoulders roll with life per second by default, so they're going to be really hard to roll like this or this at all, so just keep that in mind. If you really want to boost your toughness really high, you could put, another option. You can just put an amethyst in your helmet, make do with the higher, cooldown there. You could put an armor roll in that slot as well. Again, your shoulders are very versatile as far as that affix. And yeah, a lot of other players recommend Esoteric Alteration. I tried it. It was good for defense, but I found, the higher multiplier or the regen, in my opinion, is just better. So that's another option. And well, there you have it. I'll point you, there's going to be a link in the description for my 93 clear. I did that with like level 93 gems, only like 3 to 4 ancients, and only 1 augment, 13,000 intellect, less than, I think it was 1.7 sheet damage, so a 93, this is a very viable setup. I think it could go out to a 97 even, so I'm looking to do that in seasons, and I hope you like this setup. I'm really excited, so take care.